Well, how's it going out there, folks? Rooster in Tennessee, roostercb.com, and this is going to be another topic of discussion type, informative type video. As always, I definitely encourage folks to share their opinions, their inputs, their insights in the comment section. That way, when someone stumbles upon this video, they won't only hear my opinion, they'll get to see your guys' opinions and experiences as well. And we're going to cover what's a common question. And actually, just before I post this video, someone had asked it on the YouTube channel. For some of us that have been in the hobby for many, many years, this is perhaps common knowledge or something that comes easy to you. However, if you're new to the hobby or relatively new, it can be overwhelming deciding what type of coax you need to run for your setup. Now, I've narrowed it down to basically four that I believe are the most commonly used, or four that should be the most commonly used and can fit almost everyone's application. And we'll talk about each during the video. Now, that's not to say these are the only four cables you can use. There are obviously other options that I won't talk about. The very popular RG400, RG393, some other cables out there. But the ones I've decided to include in the video are really the ones I recommend the most. And I'll talk about kind of why that is. Now, the main characteristics of the coax I'm going to be discussing in the video are power handling capability and loss. Now, there's other characteristics such as velocity factor that if you guys want to research the effects that has on your own, again, I would highly encourage you to. But the two main characteristics I'm concerned with are the power handling and the amount of loss you have, basically 100 feet, 200 feet, how much power you're putting in versus how much is actually making it to the antenna. I will also post a link down in the comment section to qsl.net. They have a page that specifically tells you how much loss you'll have per given frequency and per however many feet you're running and per the amount of power you're running. It will tell you basically if you put 1,000 watts in, 2,000 watts in at your shack, how much is actually making it to your antenna. You guys can kind of look that up on your own. And again, you may find coax that you prefer over what I recommend. But the first coax I'm going to talk about, we have sitting in front of us. This is what is this, an 18 feet piece, I believe, 18-foot piece of LMR 240 ultraflex. Now, this is really good stuff to run in a mobile. It's flexible, has a good power handling capability. I typically recommend this for someone, 6 feet to, if you absolutely must and you want to save some money, you don't want to buy something like this, up to 100 feet. This stuff is okay. Personal testimony with this stuff. I have ran this stuff for jumpers for many years. I have tested up to a 16 pill on the transistor side through this stuff and up to a 3-tube 500Z. So the power I recommend to run through this is around 1,500 average, 3,500 PEP. That's if you're running it in shorter runs. Would I necessarily put that much through it for a 100-foot run? Probably not. I'd probably, stay down to your mobile links for that, 18 feet, 15 feet. I feel like you could run that amount of power through it. Again, someone's had different experience. You can sure tell me, but I have never burnt a piece of this up. This is LMR 240 ultraflex. They do make a solid core version of this, which is LMR 240. It's going to have a little bit less loss, but it's not stranded. It's going to be very stiff and hard to bend. This is stranded coax. Now, on the loss calculator for the LMR 240 ultraflex, let's say we're running 100 feet and we're running 1,000 watts. By the time we get to our antenna, 740, 750 watts is what's going to make it to our antenna. So basically 75% of our power makes it to the antenna. Okay, something to think about if you're running a long run of this, like 100 feet. That's why I say typically recommend it for jumpers and for mobiles. Trying to save some money. You can't afford this stuff over here. maybe a consideration for 100 feet, but I would really try and upgrade to this stuff. Now this is what I prefer over RG213. RG213 was the golden standard for coax for many years for the guys that weren't running huge amounts of power. If you were running 4,000 watts or so or less, a lot of people would recommend RG213. And this coax is about the same size. It's also flexible. It's an ultraflex type coax, and it's LMR 400 ultraflex. Now, it's in my opinion, I should say, that this coax is better than RG213 in almost every characteristic. It's less lossy, it handles more power, and it's just all around, to me, a better performing cable. Now, compared to 213, how much power will it handle? Well, I don't have a 213 stat sheet in front of me, but it's generally been a rule of thumb with me with RG213 to not run over about 4,000 watts, 4,500 watts PEP on a 100-foot run. Some people may have ran more than that and been okay, but generally that's about the cap that I recommend running it at. With LMR 400 ultraflex, I can testify to running 4,000 average and 8,500 to 9,000 PEP through this stuff. It's good coax. And that's it's not getting hot, not leaving your handprint in it or anything at that. Now, if you start getting up over that 4,000 watts average mark, it will start to get warm, and you might want to, watch your key down time. But that's a bad thing. When your coax is getting hot, that means you need to upgrade to the next coax, or maybe a couple steps up. So transistor wise, I would feel comfortable running a 32 pil through this stuff. Tube amp wise, 4-tube 500Z, not a full blown 3CX 3000. Maybe one that has a small transformer and you're kind of half stepping. But this is really good for almost any transistor amp you want to run. As far as the length I would run this at, if I was running over 150 feet of coax, I might consider upgrading from this, specifically if you're running, a good amount of power. But 100 feet to 150, maybe 175 feet, LMR 400 ultraflex is a good option. And just for an example, when we put it into our loss calculator, at 100 feet, 1,000 watts in equals about 865 watts out. So you're getting about 86% of your power out, versus 240 at 100 feet, you get about 75%. And it handles about double or more what the 240 ultraflex will. Okay. 213, still good coax. Okay. A lot of people still prefer 213. That's why I still sell it in the 18 feet runs, and I think maybe 6 feet runs, just the two more common uses of it. The 213, I still sell 213 because some people still prefer it. I prefer 400 ultraflex, but that's all up to you guys. Okay, let's see if I can get the next one up here. Now this next one is when we're starting to get into some of our heavier coax, if we want to call it coax. Let's see if we can. I didn't plan this out the greatest here. All right. This just gives you a look. We'll just compare this to our 400. Okay, this is hardline, not flexible. This is Heliax, Andrews, half-inch Heliax. I think this is Andrews. It may be a different brand that I got, but this one's got DIN connectors on the end of it. It's got 7/16 DIN connectors. But this is just comparing it to the 400, okay? It's about as big as your, what will I say, pinky? About as big as your pinky, maybe a little bigger. Depends on how fat your fingers are, I guess. But great stuff. This is the next step up. If you're unable, if you're exceeding the power for this stuff, half-inch Heliax, Andrews, or another quality brand. There's some other brands out there now that are pretty good. Or the LMR equivalent to this is LMR 600. Now, I would just go ahead and get the Heliax. And you're probably thinking, well, if I have a beam, how in the heck do I run this on a beam? Well, there's some ways you can form it to where it'll unravel itself as you turn the antenna. A lot of people just let it drop straight down the tower and it just kind of moves around the ground as they turn the antenna. It's not going to hurt it. You just don't want it to where it's like, bending all the time, because this stuff will eventually break, kink, and it's no good. It messes with the values on it if it ever kinks. So you don't want to kink this stuff, okay? Something to think about before you start upgrading those power levels. This is a headache that some people don't want to have, and it becomes even more of a headache the bigger you get. And coax becomes so important when you start running some crazy amounts of power. It really becomes a huge thing. Burning it up, the loss, the other issues that can come from it, common mode current from your antenna. There's just so many things that become very, very, very tedious once you start getting into the bigger power levels. But back to this stuff. If I personally was running over 150 feet of coax, this is what I would upgrade to. This or LMR 600. Personally, I find it to be capable of handling 5,000 to 10,000 watts average and about 20 kW to 25 kW PEP. Okay, that doesn't mean throw a 20 kW carrier through it, because it will eventually burn it up. It's harder to burn up. But 5 kW to 10 kW average seems to be the happy operating parameters for this stuff. And just an example, if you were running 100 feet of this half-inch Heliax and you were putting 1,000 watts into it, you would get 953 watts to your antenna. So 95% of your power in is going to make it to the antenna at 100 feet run. Okay, much better than the 86%, certainly better than the 75%. Okay, this is very high quality stuff. It is very expensive. It's a step that a lot of people don't want to make, especially when you go even bigger than this. But it's good stuff. Low loss, all your power is making it to the antenna and handles a good amount of power. Okay, the last one I'm going to talk about, and we probably didn't even really need to put it out here, but this is going to be good enough for most of your upper echelon stations. Most of your bigger stations that aren't running the half-inch, that are running something bigger than that, are going to be running this. This is 7/8. Same basic principle, just rather than being half-inch, it's 7/8. And if the very, very few that need more than this, excuse me as I bump the camera, are going to be running something like 1 inch and 5/8. Now, I have some 1 inch and 5/8 here, but I don't even like to pick that stuff up and move it around, because it gives me flashbacks of how aggravating it is to unravel. So I've got a couple, I think I've got a 140-foot run and maybe some shorter runs than that, but it's aggravating to mess with. This is 7/8, so you can imagine what 1 inch and 5/8 looks like. It's big stuff. You can use all kinds of different connectors on this. This one has 7/16 DIN connectors on it. There's flange style connectors. There's LC connectors. Once you get to this, there's no more running PL259 style connectors, which are these, if you're not familiar. Okay, with the 1/2 inch Heliax, they still make a specific connector that can run like a PL259 type connector. With this stuff, it's out of the question. You're going to be running a 7/16 DIN, which looks like this, or something even more robust than that. Now, this stuff is very, very, very aggravating to mess with. Not near as bad as the 1 inch and 5/8, but it still is a handful. A lot of people run it directly to their beam, and again, that's fine. You just have to make sure that you either have a way that it unravels without kinking, or a way that it can just kind of drag around without getting in a bind. Now, I recommend, if you're running over 250 feet of coax, for any of you that need that, I would go ahead and use something like some 7/8. Some people out there probably say ½ inch is fine. It is. The loss difference is probably going to be kind of minimal, but if it was me, it would probably bother me with that much power not making it to the antenna, and I would go ahead and upgrade to 7/8 if you're running 250 feet or more. Personal experience with 7/8. I have found that it will handle between 30 kW and 40 kW average and around 90 kW PEP. Now, no one running that much power runs a peak meter, so that's just a ballpark estimate. Okay, I think online they rate it, 80 kW PEP. Some places rate it at 96 kW PEP. It's just a ballpark estimate, but 30 to 40,000, especially if you're running a kind of a conservative run. Would I run that much through a 300-foot run of it? Probably not. 100 feet, 175 feet, you'd probably be fine for those that are getting into that crazy kind of output. But 30 kW average, 40 kW average, this is what I would run. In comparison, on a 100 feet run versus the ½ inch, if you were to put 1,000 watts into this coax, 975 would make it to the antenna. So 97%, almost 98% of your power makes it to the antenna at 100 feet, which is just a couple percent more than our ½ inch. Again, at 100 feet, ½ inch is going to be, fine, as long as you aren't exceeding the power rating. But that's it, guys. I just want to talk about that, and just a topic of discussion. Again, feel free to comment down in the comment section what you prefer, what you like, what you don't like. I have a feeling there will be a lot of people commenting and saying that they love the RG400, the little tiny magical coax that handles all kinds of power. That's good stuff. But these are my picks, okay? I'm not saying that's bad coax. I'm talking about the stuff that I would run for myself to narrow it down for people that are having trouble picking out what they need to run. Okay, these are my choices. The Heliax, yes, even if you aren't running gigantic amounts of power, you think, well, why would I ever need that? I'm not running any kind of crazy power. If you're running super long runs of coax, you're going to want to get as much to the antenna as possible. It's going to be disappointing if you've got a 300-foot run of coax and you're running 1,000 watts and, only 60% or 50% of your power is actually making it to the antenna. What you're seeing on the watt meter is not making it. You'd want to upgrade to something like this. Or if you don't want to go crazy, something like the ½ inch here. Okay? This is going to be good for probably 75% of the hobby. This is going to be good for probably the other 24%, the 7/8 is. And then for the 1% or less, 1 5/8, which is bigger than this. And then there's a very select few that need something bigger than 1 5/8. Probably 5 or less people in the country run bigger than 1 5/8 coax. Maybe that's an exaggeration. Maybe 10 or less, I would say, that I know of. But that's it, everybody. That's my opinion on it. Let me know what you guys think. I've been wanting to do a video like this for a while. Again, I don't sit back and script these videos, rehearse them. I kind of took a few notes on some coax stuff over here and just let it rip. So tell me what you guys think. Questions, comments, let me know. Shoot me a text, 423-299-3535. Rooster in Tennessee, roostercb.com.